Okay, here's the video lecture part 1 for the economy. Now I know this PowerPoint is geared toward several of the high schools that I teach in. I know at Riverside, you guys, we've already kind of talked about some of this a little bit. At Herbert Hoover High School, we have not really talked about this much. So this is one you'll definitely want. I think I've given you the shell for this, the PowerPoint shell, but you need to have notes. If you don't have the shell, you need to take notes on these because this is going to be important. The economy. The economy is a social institution that organizes society's production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. So the economy is one of several social institutions like the family or public education or religion that we can talk about in a sociology course. Now, what are goods? Well, goods are commodities that range from necessities to luxury items. Necessities include food, clothing, and shelter. These are things that we all have to ensure survival. So we all need food. As you can see, kind of makes you hungry probably to look at that. We all need clothing. And certainly we all need a place to live. We need shelter. So these are goods that can be purchased. They can certainly be distributed as well. And also luxury items. So goods range from necessities to these luxury items. Cars, swimming pools, yachts. So here are some examples of luxury items. These are things that we don't have to have. But it might be nice, I guess, if we did, maybe. There's a big swimming pool. Again, that would be nice. Jewelry is another example of a luxury item. It's not a necessity. You don't have to have jewelry to survive. Or a yacht to survive. Now, services, on the other hand, these are activities. These are not things that are really tangible necessarily. These are activities that benefit other people. Some examples of services include the work of teachers, such as yours truly, the work of priests, preachers, or ministers, the work of healthcare providers, the work of computer software specialists, etc., etc. Now, we value goods and services in our country for several reasons. First of all, they ensure survival, they make life easier, and they also make life more interesting. Now, certainly to the first point, we need food, clothing, and shelter on some basic level to survive. But also, goods and services can make life a lot easier. I always use as an example this right here. This is my cell phone right here. This is an example of how goods can make your life easier. I communicate with a lot of people on my cell phone. If I have a question about something, or if I'm trying to put a lecture together and I'm away from my laptop, or I just want to figure something out, all I got to do is get this thing out, get right online, or rather, go online and just kind of go to Google, ask a question, get some answers. I can check my emails from my phone. So it makes life a lot easier. And certainly, goods and services make life more interesting as well. Now, there are 3 primary sectors of the economy that I want to talk to you about. The first one is called the primary sector. The second one is the secondary sector, and then last, the tertiary sector. And we'll take each of these sectors one at a time. We'll start with the primary sector, then we'll move into the secondary sector, and then last but not least, the tertiary sector. Now, the primary sector, this is the part of the economy that literally draws raw materials from the natural environment. Some examples of primary sector occupations or activities would include farming or agriculture, raising animals, fishing, forestry, coal mining, because you are literally extracting raw materials from the earth. Fishing, you're pulling fish out of the ponds or out of the water. With forestry, you're literally taking trees out of the ground. Coal mining, you are literally taking the coal from the ground. So those are primary sector jobs: farmers, fishermen, etc. Now, the secondary sector, this is the part of the economy that takes those raw materials, like we were just talking about, like the stuff from the ground, the fish, the crops, coal, etc., and transform them into manufactured goods. Some examples of secondary sector jobs or behaviors, activities include refining petroleum into gas, turning metal into cars, turning wood into paper. So as you can see, you might be sitting at a desk or sitting in a chair made of wood. You may be writing notes right now, hopefully, writing it on something like this paper, or your wonderful PowerPoint handout that I've given you. You don't just pull paper out of the ground. It has to be made into paper from trees. So those are secondary sector occupations. Now what we're going to spend most of our time talking about is the tertiary sector. This is the part of the economy that includes services rather than goods. So we're moving away from goods and talking more about services. Examples from the tertiary sector include secretarial work, law, healthcare, teaching, food service. I would guess a lot of you who are taking notes on this right now are probably heading, after college, are heading for a tertiary sector job. I know a lot of you want to work in the medical field. Some of you want to be lawyers. A couple of you said you wanted to be teachers. So you're probably heading for the tertiary sector. And we'll talk about this. Maybe some of you are there now. If you work in fast food, you would be considered a tertiary sector employee. So you might be there right now. If you're working a minimum wage job, you might be and likely are in the tertiary sector of the economy. Now we talk a little bit about work. We're going to change horses a little bit here. Broadly defined, work is an activity that produces something of value for other people. Our definition of work encompasses a broad range of behaviors here. It's not just paid labor. Most of the time, that's what people think of when they think of work. They think, well, I'm getting a paycheck for doing something. Well, it also includes childcare, performing household tasks. Some of you have performed informal volunteer work, working with a church or maybe with a food pantry, for example, as well as paid labor. So work isn't just about being paid money or getting a paycheck for doing something. Sociologists such as Durkheim and Marx have studied work for a long time. And other sociologists have looked at the nature of work for quite some time. Emile Durkheim, if you remember, French sociologist, we've talked about him before, stresses that the division of labor makes people more dependent upon one another. In other words, the more highly specialized a society is, the more possible jobs there are, the more people depend on one another. We have to depend on people who can build roads, build houses, work in hospitals, take care of us, teach classes, fix our cars, prepare our food, etc., etc. So we're dependent. We've become very dependent upon each other in these types of societies, like informational societies that we live in, industrial societies. The move from more primitive to more modern societies has contributed to social stability as well as social integration. And we've talked about these terms before. Karl Marx, radical German philosopher, sociologist, economist, we've talked about him before, asserted the following about work. He said that work is the primary means by which people seek to fulfill their potential. And if you think about it, work is the primary means by which most of us set out to fulfill our human potential. I've said this in class before, especially to my Riverside students. You'll be hearing this again. Whatever job you choose when you get out of college, when you start working, you will probably spend more time at work than you will at home with your families, at least for some time. So it's an important means by which we seek to fulfill our promise, if you will. Marx felt that industrializing societies, I'll adjust my camera a little bit, he felt that industrializing societies were turning work into degrading and dehumanizing experiences for workers. He was alive during the Industrial Revolution, where there was a great transformation from agriculturally based economies to industrial based economies. And we've talked about that, so I won't do that again here. But at that time, he saw work, being really hazardous. I mean, not just hazardous, but possibly lethal. You had people working in overcrowded, unsanitary conditions, working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. It was not a good situation and very dehumanizing because people were separated. The workers were separated from each other. They were separated from and also separated from the products that they were producing. And remember the terms he talked about: isolation, alienation, exploitation, those kinds of things. Don't have to know those again, but that kind of brings that stuff back. And I'm going to go ahead and call that the end of this first part for the economy. Thank you.